We often talk about empathy, right? But how often do we really stop and think about what it actually means? Like its different forms, its real power, and maybe, the most important part, how do we actually build that skill? Because it is a skill. So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that, empathy. Our mission really is to get past the buzzword, explore the nuances, understand the benefits, which are huge, and give you some practical ways to cultivate it. We've looked at quite a range of stuff for this psychological articles, leadership takes, even this really practical exercise from a mental health vlog.
It's true. Empathy is, well, it's everywhere as a term, but I think its actual power, its complexity, often underestimated. It's so much more than just, being nice. It's
Yeah.
fundamental. It shapes our connections, our work, even how we deal with global issues. It's core to being human, really.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because we tend to use words like empathy and sympathy almost, well, interchangeably, but they're not the same, are they? What is empathy exactly, and how is it different from sympathy?
That's a really critical place to start. So sympathy, at its heart, is recognizing someone else is in distress. But you're not necessarily sharing that feeling emotionally. It's feeling for them. Think of like a sympathy card. You're acknowledging their pain, but maybe from a bit of a distance. You might say, oh, I'm sorry that happened. It's an acknowledgement, sure, but it doesn't always lead to a deeper connection. Sometimes it might even involve pity or, jumping in with advice they didn't ask for.
Right, the unsolicited advice trap.
Exactly. Whereas empathy is about truly trying to understand and, in a way, vicariously experience what another person is feeling. It's like stepping into their shoes,
Yeah.
feeling with them, and that fosters a much deeper emotional bond, a real mutual understanding.
That distinction is key. Okay, let's make it super concrete. You mentioned the coffee spill scenario earlier. Let's use that. Imagine, you're about to go into a big meeting and bam, coffee all down your front. How does sympathy look versus empathy in that moment?
Okay, good example. So the sympathetic friend might glance over, maybe offer you a napkin, and say, oh, that stinks, bad timing. They see the problem, they acknowledge it's unfortunate.
Okay, standard response.
Yeah. But the empathetic friend, they might pause. They probably notice the look on your face, the panic, the frustration, and maybe they don't say much, but they quietly grab that spare shirt they happen to have, or they say, hey, there's a shop downstairs, let's run down quickly. They're feeling a bit of that stress with you and acting on it.
Huge difference. One acknowledges, the other connects and acts.
Precisely. And what's really interesting is that empathy itself isn't just one thing. Researchers often talk about three main types. It's probably better to think of them as overlapping skills, though, not totally separate boxes.
Okay, what are they?
So first, there's cognitive empathy. This is sometimes called perspective taking. It's about understanding someone's thoughts and feelings on an intellectual level. You figure out why they might be feeling a certain way based on their situation, their perspective, but you don't necessarily feel those emotions yourself. It's like reading the situation using context clues.
So you get it, but you're not necessarily sad with them.
Exactly. It's a thinking process. And importantly, understanding someone's perspective doesn't mean you agree with it or approve of it. It's just comprehension.
Got it. Cognitive. What's next?
Next is emotional empathy, sometimes called affective empathy. This is probably what most people think of when they hear empathy. It's when you actually feel the emotions of others. You resonate with them. You see someone crying, and you feel a pang of sadness yourself. That's emotional empathy firing up.
Ah, the feeling contagion almost.
You can put it that way, yeah. It's that direct sharing of emotion. And then the third type is compassionate empathy. Now, this one is often seen as the most, well, constructive form. It brings together the understanding from cognitive empathy and the feeling from emotional empathy, and adds a crucial third element, the motivation to help.
Ah, so it's understanding, feeling, and doing something.
Exactly. So back to the crying coworker example. You feel sad seeing them cry,
Yeah.
emotional. You understand maybe why they're upset because you know about the project stress, cognitive. And then that combination moves you to actually do something supportive. Maybe write them a kind note, offer to grab them a coffee, or help with the task. That's compassionate empathy.
That really clarifies the layers: cognitive, emotional, compassionate. Okay, so if those are the types, how does not having or using these, especially the compassionate kind, play out? You mentioned something called an irrelationship.
Yes, the concept of irrelationship. It's interesting. It describes a dynamic where people can feel incredibly lonely, even when they're with someone else.
How can you be lonely if you're not alone? That sounds like a paradox.
It does, doesn't it? But it happens when there's what the source called a brain lock. It's like this mutual, often unconscious agreement between people to avoid vulnerability, to avoid real, deep connection. And that avoidance often means shutting down compassionate empathy. You maintain a safe distance emotionally.
Like the anecdote about Felicia and George.
Exactly. The source described them as having spent years basically avoiding each other emotionally, and in doing so, avoiding themselves, too. They chose this kind of brittle safety over real intimacy. Their interactions lacked excitement, that feeling of really loving and being loved, of deeply sharing life. That brain lock kept them orbiting each other, but not truly connecting. It wasn't until the loneliness became overwhelming that they found the courage to break that pattern and risk vulnerability.
Wow, that paints a stark picture. Avoiding empathy has a real cost then. So let's flip it. If the cost is loneliness and disconnection, what's the big upside? Why does developing empathy, especially that compassionate kind, matter so much? What's the payoff?
Oh, the benefits are, well, they're massive across the board. One powerful idea is that empathy is the antidote to shame.
The antidote to shame? How so?
Shame is that deep, gut-level feeling of being flawed, unworthy. Empathy offers the opposite experience. It provides this neurobiological sense of acceptance, of connection. It's where self-worth starts to take root. And that's vital for healthy relationships, obviously, because empathy makes isolation hard to maintain. It actively pushes back against self-obsession. Research consistently shows that higher empathy leads to fewer arguments, stronger trust, people feeling genuinely valued and understood. It reduces isolation, builds community, all critical for mental well-being, for life satisfaction.
That makes complete sense on a personal level. What about professionally? Does empathy actually matter in the workplace, or is it still seen as, a soft skill that's nice but not essential?
Oh, it's absolutely essential, not soft at all. Cognitive empathy, in particular, is a powerhouse in the workplace, even if it's sometimes overlooked. Get this, one study found 91% of CEOs believe empathy is directly linked to their company's financial performance.
91%, that's huge.
It is, and cognitive empathy is key here because it lets leaders understand emotions, their teams, their clients, without necessarily getting swamped by those emotions themselves. This allows for clearer thinking, less personal distress influencing decisions, more objective choices. It's a massive part of emotional intelligence, EQ. And EQ accounts for something like 58% of job success in many roles, way more than IQ often.
58%, wow. So what does that look like on the ground? What are the tangible benefits in an office?
You see it in better problem solving, definitely stronger team relationships because people feel understood, much higher employee engagement and satisfaction, which of course means lower turnover. It boosts creativity, innovation, because people feel safer sharing ideas. Communication improves drastically, think active listening, and conflict resolution becomes much smoother.
Okay, so personal life, check. Professional life, check. What about bigger conflicts, like international relations mediation? Can empathy really play a role at that scale? Seems like a huge leap.
It's a leap, but yes, absolutely. Empathy is a surprisingly critical tool in conflict resolution, even at the highest levels. Its power lies in requiring a shift in perspective. That shift can totally change how you understand people, groups, events, even if you have the same facts. It gives you insights into character, beliefs, values, fears, motivations, things that facts alone don't tell you.
Can you give an example?
Sure. One source mentioned the Colombian peace process. Mediators realized the FARC leaders' deep distrust. Their insistence on a long delay before disarming wasn't just stubbornness. It stemmed from a specific historical trauma, a massacre in the 80s where disarmed members were killed. Understanding the deep-seated fear through empathy allowed the mediators to address it directly, build in specific reassurances, and move forward. Without that insight, stalemate.
Wow, okay, so it unlocks understanding.
Exactly. And beyond insight, it builds trust. Trust is the absolute bedrock of any peace process. Empathy helps mediators and eventually the parties themselves feel more confident in the reliability of others. It's like being able to carefully read their minds. Think about the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. The report suggests the personal relationship between John Kerry and Javad Zarif, built partly on understanding each other's constraints and perspectives, a form of cognitive empathy was vital for keeping the difficult talks going. Small gestures mattered.
Like understanding the other side's pressures back home.
Precisely. And empathy also enables recognition. So many conflicts escalate because one side feels ignored, dismissed, disrespected. Empathy allows people to feel heard, understood. That lowers hostility, makes constructive talks possible. Some argue, for instance, that a lack of Western empathy for Russia's security concerns after the Cold War regarding NATO expansion may have sown seeds for later conflict.
That's not about agreeing with the concerns, but about understanding the perspective.
Exactly. It's about understanding the mindset, whether you agree or not, because that understanding informs strategy and prevents unintended consequences. And finally, empathy can catalyze new approaches. It humanizes the other side. It chips away at hatred and encourages perspective taking. There was this fascinating example from the Georgian-Abkhaz conflict. They did a role play where Georgians had to play the Abkhaz side. Their ability to accurately portray the Abkhaz perspective, their fears and hopes, apparently stunned everyone and opened up completely new avenues for negotiation.
That's incredible. It reminds me of that analogy you mentioned, empathy as electricity.
Right, empathy is like plugging into this incredibly powerful source. And compassion. Compassion is like the circuit breaker, the fuse. It regulates the current, stops you from getting totally overwhelmed or electrocuted every time you connect deeply with someone else's pain. Compassionate empathy allows you to harness that power without burning out.
What a powerful image. Okay, this all sounds amazing. The potential reach of empathy is just vast. But let's be real, it also sounds hard. What makes it so difficult sometimes? Why don't we see more of it?
It is hard, and there's often what's called an empathy gap. Leaders, for instance, tend to overestimate how empathetic they or their organizations are. Remember that stat, 92% of CEOs think their company's empathetic, but only 72% of employees actually agree. There's a disconnect.
Why the gap?
Several reasons. One big one is the misconception that empathy somehow means being weak or indecisive. Around 68% of CEOs apparently worry about that. Then there are just the pressures of the modern workplace, tight deadlines, constant pressure. It can feel like there's no time for empathy. We should also acknowledge neurodiversity plays a role. Empathy can be understood and expressed differently by different people. And cognitive empathy, especially, isn't automatic. It takes conscious effort.
And the cost of not making that effort goes back to?
Back to Felicia and George. Avoiding that deeper, compassionate empathy leads to that brittle safety, that underlying loneliness, instead of genuine connection.
Okay, so it's difficult, there are barriers, but can we actually improve? Is empathy fixed, something you're born with, or can you genuinely develop it?
Oh, absolutely developable. That's the really encouraging part. Think of it like a muscle or fitness. You might have a natural inclination, sure, but everyone can strengthen their empathy muscles with practice. And studies back this up. Empathy training works.
A muscle we can strengthen. I like that.
Okay.
Okay, let's get practical then. How do we actually work out these empathy muscles? One exercise from the sources really caught my eye, the one involving writing. Can you walk us through that?
Yes. It's a simple but quite profound exercise. Okay, here's how you do it. Grab a piece of paper. Step 1. For about, say, 5 to 7 minutes, write in the first person using I statements, as if you were someone you care about. Could be a friend, your child, partner, parent. The key is to try and climb right inside their experience. Focus on what they might be feeling. Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Just explore their emotional world from the inside.
Okay, step into their shoes with a pen.
Exactly. Then, step 2. Flip the paper over. Now, for another 5 to 7 minutes, write in the first person using I statements about what it's like to be you. And interestingly, people often report this second step is harder.
Harder to write about yourself. Why?
Because it forces self-empathy. It forces you to be present with your own feelings, your own experience, without judgment. And many of us are, frankly, not very practiced at that.
That's fascinating. So the exercise builds empathy outwards and inwards.
Precisely. It builds capacity for compassion towards others, yes.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the importance of being present with yourself, which is really the starting point for genuine empathy towards anyone else. You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Makes sense. Okay, besides that specific exercise, what other habits or tools can people use day to day to boost their empathy?
There are quite a few practical things. Active listening is probably number 1. That means really truly focusing when someone is talking. Not just the words, but the tone, the body language. Not planning your response while they're still speaking. It shows you're genuinely trying to understand their underlying feelings.
Less waiting to talk, more actual listening.
Yes. Then there's conscious perspective taking. Make it a regular practice. When you interact with someone, especially if you feel friction, take a moment. Ask yourself, what might be going on for them? What's their world look like right now? You can even try perspective-taking minutes, just a silent pause to consider their viewpoint.
What else?
Pay attention to the unspoken stuff. Observe nonverbal cues, facial expressions, gestures, posture. They often tell you more about emotions than words do. Also, actively seek diverse experiences. Talk to people different from you. Read books about different lives or cultures. Travel if you can. It broadens your understanding of human experience.
Get outside your bubble.
Definitely. And in conversations, ask open-ended questions. Questions that start with what, how, tell me more about. They invite deeper sharing than yes-no questions. Practicing reflective listening helps too. After a conversation, take a moment. Think back. What did they really say? What might they have been feeling underneath? And crucially, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself when you struggle. If you can accept your own difficult feelings, you're less likely to shut down when you encounter someone else's pain.
That self-empathy piece again?
It's foundational. And finally, remember boundaries. Saying, I care about what you're going through and I need a moment before I can fully engage, isn't unempathetic. It's actually a vital empathic act toward yourself, preventing burnout and allowing you to show up more fully later. It models healthy self-regulation.
That's a great list of actionable strategies. So much upside. But are there any downsides? Any limits or risks to empathy we should be mindful of? It can't be a perfect solution for everything, can it?
That's a fair question. And no, it's not perfect. There are potential pitfalls. First, you can try to empathize, but simply get it wrong. You can misinterpret someone's feelings or situation, especially if it's complex or you lack information.
So empathy isn't mind reading.
Not at all. Second, sometimes gaining a deeper understanding of an adversary, for example, might actually lead to less optimism but finding common ground. You might realize the gap is wider than you thought. Some Israeli-Palestinian peace-building reports mention this possibility.
Disillusionment as a potential outcome.
It can happen. Third, unfortunately, empathy can be exploited. One party might feign vulnerability or manipulate another's empathy for their own gain. And fourth, there can be social or even political costs. If you empathize with a group that your own community demonizes, you might face backlash.
So it requires care and critical thinking.
Absolutely. But, and this is crucial, these potential drawbacks don't mean we should ditch empathy. Not at all. It just means we need to practice it deliberately, critically, with self-awareness. And ideally, we should build it into structures, like in professional mediation, so it's applied thoughtfully. It's a rational, incredibly useful tool that we can sharpen with training. It's not just some vague, sentimental feeling.
What an incredible journey this has been. We started with just trying to pin down empathy versus sympathy, then explored the different types, saw the massive benefits in our personal lives and leadership, even in global conflicts, and got into really practical ways to build it while also acknowledging, yeah, it has limits and needs careful handling.
And the core message, I think, is that empathy, especially that compassionate kind, is really the dynamic that pulls us out of loneliness and into real meaningful connection. It's a skill, a tool, a powerful one that we can all get better at through practice.
So here's a thought to leave you with. If empathy truly is like a muscle, and if we've learned today it's potentially the antidote to loneliness and the key to deep connection, what might our lives, our workplaces, our world look like if we all genuinely committed to building our empathy fitness every single day? Not just for others, but crucially for ourselves too.